Welcome back to another edition of LoveTheNorth.ca. I'm Rick Wyman, along with my good friend Craig, to talk sports for another week. We'll talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs in just a moment. But Craig, briefly, I'm a genius when it comes to picking the Masters winner because I said last week that Rory McIlroy would win the Masters, and he did. He almost slipped. Well, he did slip a few times, but rallied to win on Sunday. That's all that matters because even though I don't know a lot about golf, I can pick a Masters winner. At least I did this year.
You did, Rick. It just proves one thing that I keep saying. When I get predictions right, blind squirrels can find acorns.
It's one of those things. You can find an acorn, you can get a nut, you can do whatever you have to do. But good tournament and some rather interesting moments coming up, at least in that look at the entire golf season now. Is Rory going to be able to continue his prolific play? And some of the up and coming golfers have shown a lot of promise this year. So I'm kind of looking forward to some of the major events this year. And congratulations to Rory. So enough about that and my intelligence on picking a winner. It was a great guess, and I'll live with that. We're here to talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs, Craig. We've got some great matchups. Let's begin in the Eastern Conference. Carolina Hurricanes, not to be confused with the Carolina Panthers in football, will be up against the Ottawa Senators in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think in this case that Ottawa is the team that could probably knock off Carolina because I really question Carolina's goaltending. They've got some good offensive forwards, but it's one of those series that's going to be a rough and tumble affair that could go 6 or 7. But I think Ottawa has the wherewithal to finish out on top. What say you?
This could be an upset special, Rick. I watch Senators quite often. They're a very good defensive team. They play a tight, structured game under Travis Green. They have people that can score. Drake Batherson, Tim Stutzla. They do have some scoring. They've had good secondary scoring from Dylan Cousins. This team can score goals. Here's the question with Ottawa. What Linus Ullmark is going to show up? Is it going to be the Linus Ullmark who was great in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season? Or is it going to be the Linus Ullmark who trudged through October and November? Both teams, in my view, have questions in goal. I like Ullmark if he's on his game. I like him better than Pyotr Pochetkov. I like him better than Bussy. I like him better than Freddie Anderson. This is not going to be a slam dunk for the top seeded Panthers. There's not that many points between these two teams. Ottawa's a good skating team. I think they'll frustrate Carolina, and I'm going to call this an upset special. Ottawa
How many?
Senators to win in 7 games.
7 games. Wow. I kind of like 6 right now in terms of an Ottawa win, but I agree with many of your points. I just think that Ottawa is just a tougher team. They've gone through a lot of adversity this season and are built for this matchup. Another intriguing matchup in the NHL East involves the Boston Bruins and the Buffalo Sabres. And kudos to many Buffalo fans out there who watch this podcast on a weekly basis. It's been a long time, 14 years since a playoff berth. And again, up against a tough Boston team, kind of like the Bruins in this scenario, but Buffalo has surprised me all season long. They get rid of their general manager. New guy comes in. He pretty well just follows the lay of the land after the table was already set. Great coaching. Everything went along according to Hoyle, as they say in the card game. And Buffalo surprised every hockey fan going with that first place finish. But I kind of like Boston in this one, maybe in 6 games. I just think they've got the NHL experience. And Swayman has played a terrific season in goal. Kind of wondering about the inexperience for Buffalo. So I kind of like Boston in this series.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one, Rick. I like Buffalo. And I'm not a Bruins fan nor a Sabres fan, so I have no skin in this game, if I'll say it that way. The Bruins had a good season. Jeremy Swayman's a good goaltender. Morgan Geekie had another breakout season, 39 goals, not to be sneezed at. David Pastrnak is a tremendous player. Charlie McAvoy anchors their defense. I think that Boston has gotten a lot out of what I would call middling talent. So kudos to their coach, Marco Sturm, who I think has done a terrific job. However, Buffalo, I think, has a lot of the elements. First of all, they have a good goaltender, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and those fans for the Sudbury Wolves, you may remember him. UPL. Well, UPL is the man who's driving the UPS truck as far as the Sabres go. He's a good goaltender. He's got a big physical defense. Rasmus Dahlin, Stanley, Samuelson, they can move people in and out around the crease. Bowen Byram's an emerging star. The Sabres have a lot of talent up front. Tage Thompson, Josh Doan, others. Jason Zucker's had a good year. Several other Sabres have had excellent seasons. I think that Buffalo is one of those teams that you can't sleep on. I think Buffalo will win this series, Rick, in 6 games. I just don't see the Bruins having the overall depth that the Sabres do, and I think that's going to be telling in a long series.
Well, Boston's been there before. Buffalo hasn't. I think the inexperience is going to get to the Sabres because, as you well know, come playoff hockey, and we've seen it in the OHL playoffs already firsthand, that things change dramatically. The checking gets tougher. And the guys that had great seasons overall in the offensive minded regular season tend to get shut down. So I'm dying to see how that's going to play between Buffalo and the Boston Bruins. I like Boston in this series. I like 6 games. I just think that they are going to rely on their experience and pull one out. Next series really concerns me. It's Montreal and Tampa, and I'm kind of annoyed by Montreal's inconsistency of late, being a Canadiens fan. Um, you may not like this, Craig, because I know you're a Canadiens fan, but I honestly think that Tampa is going to win this series based on what they've done. I hope I'm wrong, but right now my gut feeling tells me that Tampa is the better team in a 6 or 7 game series. We've seen spurts of brilliance from the Canadiens, but some of the overall consistency, the game against Philadelphia bothered me. The Columbus game last Saturday night really bothered me, even though teams are not even using their full lineup against Montreal. But some of the defensive breakdowns and some of the play by some of the guys that have had half decent seasons really disturbs me against a pretty mature and talented Tampa team. You may not like it, but I think the Lightning will prevail in this series and teach Montreal a very valuable lesson.
Well, lessons are taught at playoff time. I agree with that. I'm the biggest Habs fan on the planet, so this really pains me to tell you that I agree with your pick, but I'm going to go into some detail as to why. Let's start with the Montreal Canadiens. They are a growing team. That means that a lot of their nucleus is young and
Mhm.
they are inexperienced. And one of the areas where they're inexperienced is in the goal. And to me, that's the biggest difference between these two teams. Dobesh has had a terrific season as a rookie. Fowler has done well as the backup, but they're against Andrei Vasilevsky. Now, Vasilevsky is a guy with proven NHL Stanley Cup champion pedigree. This guy is a good goaltender, and he tends to shine the brightest when the games mean the most. That's the biggest difference between these two teams. The other difference between these two teams is playoff experience. You've
Mhm.
got guys like Brandon Hagel, and you've got Braden Point, and you've got Kucherov. These guys are Stanley Cup champions. They know how to win. And that to me is the biggest difference between these two teams. Montreal has equivalent talent. They have a good forward group. They have a very solid defense, but none of these guys have won. And sometimes in sports, there's a saying, Rick, sometimes you have to learn how to lose before you can win. And although I think Montreal will give Tampa a great series, and I can see this series going 6 or 7 games, I have to say, unfortunately, that I think Tampa will be victorious.
Well, as Meatloaf once sang, you took the words right out of my mouth. Well said, sir. Is there a rebuttal to what you just said? No, I think not. I just don't feel right about this matchup, and I would have preferred Montreal to get home ice advantage. And I know there's been frustration at times with Coach Marty St. Louis and the way he looks at his team, and they just don't execute the way they should, and especially against some of the lesser lights. And it really bothers me because they beat Tampa during the regular season, but Tampa is one of those teams that, come playoff time, we all know you're gripping that stick a little tighter sometimes, and you're hard pressed. Is Cole Caulfield or Nick Suzuki or Uri Slavkovsky going to have that free-willing ability come playoff time? John Cooper is cooking up that recipe in Tampa right now to stop that, you know, any prolific scoring from Montreal. Montreal's secondary lines are going to have to really pick it up 2, 3, and 4. Demidov, is he going to be able to get free reign on the ice come playoff time? They'll be looking after him. Don't forget, Tampa's got a load of grinders on that team that could, do what they have to do. They've come awfully close at times. And you know what? Battling Florida, you'll learn a lot of lessons. They can play tough, and that's how I see this whole series playing out. But it's unfortunate. But like you said, lessons are learned in the playoffs. And for Montreal, after last season's loss to Washington, I didn't like that one either. I thought Montreal was just too small to combat Washington after seeing Tom Wilson run over everyone. But again, it's going to be a gritty, grinded out type of series, and I don't think Montreal can compete with that.
Well, they have a good team, Rick, but I think they're moving up in class.
Yes.
I think that Tampa is one of those few teams that will play better in the playoffs than they do in the regular season. And I think bottom line, that's what I see. I see the Tampa veterans raising their game. The question will be, will the Cab youngsters be able to raise theirs?
Series number 4, the Philadelphia Flyers and Pittsburgh Penguins in the state of Pennsylvania. This is going to be an interesting series to watch because I like both teams the way they play. Saw the Flyers last night without a full lineup, and they still beat Montreal, which is irrelevant right now. But this is going to be a good one, and I'm dying to see how Pittsburgh is going to respond. I have questions right now about Pittsburgh's goaltending, even though it has been better with Skinner in net from Edmonton. Go figure. Had a hard time. He struggled in Edmonton. He goes to Pittsburgh, and you know what? They've got a nice tandem there that perhaps in this series might be good enough to beat the Flyers. I think the Flyers' inexperience is going to hurt them. They've got a young and up and coming team, aggressive, which is what I like to see from that Flyers team. But kind of leaning towards Pittsburgh in this series. I just think that they've got the experience, and Sid can always pull one out of the hat when he wants to, and he's got some core players there. Kind of like Pittsburgh, probably in 6 or 7 games.
Rick, you can call this series the Whiz Kids, Philadelphia, versus the Wheeze Kids,
Yeah,
Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, the old veteran squad, a lot of older players, tremendous pedigree, past champions. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Rust, others. Good team, play well. They were not expected to be in the playoffs. As you remember,
that's
beginning
right.
of the season, Pittsburgh, they're going to be terrible. Well, guess what? They did a great job. Coaching staff did a terrific job. They made the playoffs on merit. They played well throughout the season, and they played through an injury with Sidney Crosby. And I think that tells you a lot about their team as well, that they can play through injuries. So veteran experience here, I think, is going to be important. And you can be rest assured that before that series starts, Sidney Crosby is going to have a little talk with some of the guys in the locker room and say, boys, I'm not leaving easily this year. I've been out of the dance for a bit. I want to make sure that I reintroduce myself, even at 38 years old. Now, the Flyers. The Flyers have had a really successful season. This is a team that hadn't made the playoffs in 7 years prior to this season. So this is a real renaissance for the Flyers. Dan Vladar has had a terrific season. He has been way under the radar for the Flyers. He's the main reason that they're there. Played very well down the stretch. Philadelphia has an exciting young team. And you say, well, what do you mean, exciting young team? They have a new call up, Porter Martone. If that name is familiar, it should be. Brampton Steelheads, World Junior Hockey Championship. He has come up in the last few games and he has been fantastic. And he adds to a pretty dynamic Philadelphia forward core. Konechny, Couturier, Tyson Forster. They have people that can score some goals. My question with the Flyers, their defense. They have Travis Sanheim, but really they don't have a great deal behind him. I think that Pittsburgh has a little bit deeper defense. They have experience. I think Pittsburgh will win this series, and I think that Sidney Crosby will will them to victory. Pittsburgh in 6 games.
I like the job that the Flyers coaching staff has done this year as well. Nice turnaround to get the team into the playoffs and opened up a lot of eyes. There was a struggle there for a while. You weren't sure if Philadelphia was going to make it or not, but they've done a really good job in terms of getting things in the right direction. And in the last minute, managed to get into the playoffs. Now comes the real learning experience. As for some of the players right now, it's going to be, again, one of those series. Is Philadelphia going to go out and play roughhouse with Pittsburgh and try to get the Penguins off their game? I mean, we saw a bit of an example last night against Montreal. There were some pretty good checks thrown out there. But again, Pittsburgh can respond. So there's a point I want to bring up in regards to the East this year. And we've talked about this so many times, is that it just appears to be too wide open. You might have a team or two that may be the favorite, kind of like what we see in the West, which we'll get to momentarily. But this year, it's kind of been all over the road with teams struggling, teams playing better hockey, but no dominant team per se to say that here is your clear-cut Stanley Cup champion.
Well, Rick, here's the situation as I see it. To make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference this year, you have to have at least 97 points. Now, there could be more because the final results aren't in. That means we have a lot of good, strong teams in the conference. And Carolina, you look at the Carolina matchup with Ottawa, for example. There's only 16 points between these two teams. And you say, well, 16 points, that's a lot. You know what that is over an 82 game schedule? It's 2 points every 10 games. So these teams are tight. 1 through 8 is tight. Every series has even, well-balanced matchups. That's why it's so wide open. There's no clear-cut favorite in the East because you've got tremendous teams. So it's going to be the team, Rick, that gets hot, the team that gets timely goal scoring, and the other factor that fans have to remember, and it's worth saying now, back in the old days when you and I started watching hockey, we didn't have to talk about this. But sudden death overtime in the Stanley Cup playoffs is a game changer.
Oh,
Five
yes.
minute overtime is out the door. 3-on-3 overtime, out the door. 5-on-5 for as long as it goes. And that's what tests your depth, Rick. Those long games, those double overtime games where somebody emerges as the hero. And you're going to see a lot of that in the Eastern Conference. Rick, because I think there's a lot of games that are going to be one goal games, and I think you're going to see a lot of games go to overtime. And the team that can get the clutch scoring late in games and in overtime will win these series.
Favorite overtime call, Rick Generetta, the Buffalo Sabres, Brad May with his
Mayday,
Mayday, Mayday,
mayday.
Mayday.
Yes, sir. I remember it well.
Yeah, gotta love the overtime calls. Western Conference, we know for sure that Colorado Avalanche will be going up against some pretty good competition, and this is why we disagree with the playoff format the way it is. But a good team is going to be sidelined in the first round in the West, and there are still some undetermined matchups. We'll try to get through some of these to the best of our ability, the wherefores and whys. But again, when you see um, Colorado and you have Dallas and you have Minnesota, three of the league's best or better teams all grouped together in the same division. That really bothers me, but that's just the way it is. And I kind of like Colorado to win everything this year, but there are still many hurdles to hurdle. As I like to say, you got to win 16 games, Craig. And the thing is, it could be tough for Colorado along that path. But some of the matchups, you've got Minnesota. I don't know, maybe a dark horse in that NHL West and Dallas. I always thought at one time, yeah, here's a team that could possibly win it too. Everybody else, I don't know. I just think the top three teams are in the one division, and that's unfortunate.
Well, Rick, it's a casualty of the Gary Bettman NHL. Now, Gary Bettman, and you said it right this week when we were talking about it, Gary Bettman is obsessed with divisional rivalries. And that's great, except in the playoffs. So going back to the East, Tampa and Montreal are finishing in the top of the conference. Okay. And the bottom line is that one of these top four teams is going home.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't probably be that way, but that's the Gary Bettman NHL. The same thing goes for Dallas and Minnesota. These teams are the second and third ranked teams in the Western Conference. They're excellent teams. One of these two teams, actually, both of these teams, I would say, would be Stanley Cup contenders.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? In the Gary Bettman NHL, one of these teams is going home after round one. Is there something wrong with that? I think there is. But Gary Bettman will not change the playoff format. Maybe it's time to rethink that. But we're not there. We have to go with the system that's in front of us.
Um, an overview right now as to what could or might happen. Vegas and Edmonton still kind of battling it out. I mean, Anaheim, we're not sure where Anaheim is going to be in the Pacific. Your wild card teams right now, as we speak, are Utah and the Kings, who have been playing really good hockey, and so is Quinton Byfield the last couple of games. He's been on a roll, so I guess the Kings are getting their game together. One thing that I'm going to say unequivocally, you're not going to see Edmonton in the Stanley Cup final. Their goaltending this season has frustrated me to no end. And I just think that someone by the name of Connor McDavid is going to lose it by the time the playoffs are over, because I think the Oilers' goaltending will lead to their demise in postseason play.
It could well be, but let's go back to a comment that Connor McDavid made a couple of weeks ago. Some reporter asked him about the Pacific Division, and Connor McDavid's a pretty honest guy. And he told the reporter straight into his eye, the Pacific Division is a pillow fight. And really, he was right.
Yes.
The Pacific Division is a pillow fight. These teams would have been knocked to kingdom come if they were in the Central Division, because none of these teams are nearly as good as Colorado, Minnesota, or Dallas. So I want to talk about Minnesota and Dallas for a couple of minutes here, because that's a series that I think is going to bear a lot of watching. Both of these teams, excellent teams, good goaltending, Stars have excellent defense. The Wild have improved greatly with the addition of Quinn Hughes. The forward group, Kaprizov, Boldy, Hartman, terrific line. Zuccarello, Eriksson Ek. Dallas has Wyatt Johnston. You've got Jason Robertson. You've got Matt Duchene. You've got a bunch of guys who can really put the puck in the net. There's very little to choose between these two teams. And the other thing is, neither of these two teams have won. And that's a big factor. So one of these teams that haven't won is going to move on. Who's gone the furthest? Dallas. Who's the team with the most to prove? Dallas. Because they've been beaten by Edmonton last year, and they can't seem to get it done. So the question for the Dallas Stars is, can they get it done? And the question for the Minnesota Wild is, are you really an upper echelon NHL team? So that's going to be a 7-game series. And if you flip the coin, you could actually argue that Dallas will win 50 times and Minnesota could win 50 times. But we have to call the winner. And I think the winner, because they have so much to prove and a lot of demons, will be the Dallas Stars. But that series will be a war.
Heiskanen and Hintz right now injured. So
Yes.
that's going to play an important role into that series. I don't know. I'm just not convinced with Dallas. I'm going to roll with Minnesota. I'm going to say that the Foligno brothers may have an impact in this series. They're going to be out there, and they are the grit guys in that Minnesota lineup. So again, it's going to be one of those scenarios. And I think Minnesota's goaltending. Let's not overlook Minnesota's goaltending. Balanced, you can go with A or B. Wallstead, capable. Take your pick. I just have this gut feeling. I'm going with the gut feelings today. Can I show that? Can I actually express my gut feelings? I have a hunch about Minnesota. I think that this could be the year. Dallas it's been a roller coaster for them. Yeah, they're great at times, and then sometimes you see them and they're not so great. They don't impress me as much as Colorado does, but that's another story for another day. We still don't know who Colorado is going to wind up playing, but I'm going to go with Minnesota in 6 in this one.
Wow. Well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with expressing your gut because, Rick, a lot of these calls, honestly, tight series, they're gut calls. There's not a lot to choose between these teams. So at the end of the day, yeah, you're going with your gut.
Okay, quick question for you. With Vegas and John Tortorella behind the bench, now they lead the Pacific. They're 2 points up on Edmonton, 3 up on Anaheim entering the last couple of nights. Can we take this Vegas team as a serious Stanley Cup contender?
Wow, that's a great question, Rick. I would say for the first 75 games of the season, no, because the Vegas Golden Knights, in my mind, badly underperformed. It seems that with John Tortorella at the helm, they might be performing to their level. And this team, when it plays well, is a very good team. Now, one big question mark with Vegas, and that's goaltending. Adin Hill, Carter Hart, they really haven't shown me that they can win a playoff series. Now, bear in mind, these guys are good goaltenders, but you're facing some terrific goaltenders in this series, even the lower teams. So let's say that Vegas wins the Pacific Division. Okay, and they're going to play the first wild card, the Utah Mammoth, if that's the case. And here's the thing. The Utah Mammoth have Karel Hamelka. This guy is a terrific goaltender. And this Utah team, all I can tell you, I've watched a lot of them this season, don't sleep on them. They've got a lot of talent, and they've got a rabid fan base in Salt Lake City. Don't be deceived by the fact they can only seat 13,000 in that arena. That arena is loud. That arena is enthusiastic. And I'm not saying that the Mammoth will pull an upset, but it's very possible. They've got a lot of talent out there.
You're
Vegas, they're going to have to work.
you're cutting my grass. I was about to mention Utah because as perhaps a dark horse, I like that one against Vegas because Vegas, a lot of talent, as you had suggested, and great move in getting Torts behind the bench. Something had to change. And again, that's one of those scenarios. And I wish that we already had the playoff matchups in a predetermined manner. Um, Utah, anything is possible. Kind of wondering about the LA Kings. Struggled over the course of the season. And again, now they've caught fire the last 6 to 10 games. Kind of like to see them do better in the postseason. I mean, they've matched up against Edmonton for so many years, only to lose. I don't know. Do we get Edmonton and the Kings again? I hope not for the Kings' sake, but I'd like to see them see if they can get any success going in playoff time. But that's a different scenario. And again, I only wish that we had the definitive playoff matchups, but I'm still looking at a couple of teams that, we'll have to see what happens. Anaheim kind of young in terms of their inexperience, in terms of making any noise come playoff time. But my definitive pick to win the West is still got to be Colorado. I just can't see anyone topping that team. They've got so much firepower. Goaltending, not the best, but in some cases, like we saw with the Oilers, when they won their Stanley Cups in the 80s, you don't have to have the best goaltending to win a Stanley Cup.
Well, let's talk about the Kings because you brought them up. I think that's an interesting team. Here's the thing with the Los Angeles Kings. The Los Angeles Kings have played more overtime games than an Inco shift worker. Now, you say that's crazy, but listen, the
Oh,
Kings
that's funny.
played
That's funny,
30
Craig.
games overtime or shootout.
Right.
So that means they're the kind of team that really struggles to win games. They have a scoring problem in Los Angeles. Yeah, they've got Adrian Kempe, but they really don't and they've got Panarin, they picked him up. They don't have great scoring. So they have to rely on fantastic goaltending. And Darcy Kemper's a very capable goaltender. I just don't see that team going for it because they just don't score enough goals. As far as some of the other teams, yes, the Anaheim Ducks, very exciting team, young team, up and coming. Dostal, we talked about him before in the context of the Olympics. This guy is still your ultimate hot and cold goaltender. If he's hot, hey, Anaheim can pull an upset. If he's not, Anaheim will be gone in 4 or 5 games, regardless of who they play. But and I'm going to focus back to your original comment. I think right now the West is Colorado's to lose. That doesn't mean that they'll get through, but I think it's Colorado's to lose.
And I think Cale Makar will be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner if you want me to go out on a limb, because I just think he's a sensational defenseman. Rick,
Fantastic player.
playoffs to be determined in the NHL's West, and we'll get to that later on as we progress. But my favorite time of the year, I always look forward to the hockey in the first and second rounds. I think it's the best hockey before it starts to get real sluggish and teams start to bear down and the fatigue factor sets in. And it's just not the same by the time you get to the Stanley Cup final, because I always say upsets can and will happen in the first or second rounds. And we've already diagnosed, well, a couple of the scenarios. Before we end off, just a couple of notes. Um, Joe Bowen, after 44 years, calling his last game this week. He did it in Toronto live. His away games are done on the monitor. And he said the other day that he didn't get into the business to call Leaf games off a monitor. And I concur. The business has changed dramatically, where teams are looking at cost saving measures. And to have Joe and Jim Ralph sitting behind a monitor in Toronto at the Sportsnet studios or even the TSN studios and call a Leafs game is atrocious. I mean, we grew up with a lot of that. French TV has suffered through a lot of that, where they didn't actually go do the games live. They saw the games off a monitor. It's no way to call professional sports. And as a broadcaster, and I'm sure that you agree that, come on, Toronto, spend a few bucks. And the thing is, for Joe to leave on such a, I'm not going to say it's a bitter note. I mean, he's done 44 years, but he brings up a valid point. Let's have some live broadcasts for the guys who put their heart and soul into the game. And I can appreciate what he's gone through. But, he will be missed by Leaf fans. And he's done it all. Not a bad gig for a guy from Sudbury.
Well, Joe Bowen's had a great career. He's a Hall of Famer. You can't take that away from him. Here's the reality of professional sports, Rick. Professional sports are run by accountants. Now, you say that's crazy, but you can be rest assured that somebody is going behind the scenes and saying, hey, you know what? We can save $100,000 or $200,000 by not running the broadcast live. Put the guys behind the monitor. There may be other considerations as well, but we won't get into those. Accountants run sports. The accounting departments are the czars. Should it be that way? No, it shouldn't. And for the Toronto Maple Leafs, the richest organization in the NHL, the team with one of the greatest valuations, in fact, probably the top 2 or 3 in the league, they don't need to penny pinch and put Joe Bowen or Jim Ralph or anybody for that matter behind a monitor.
That's our show for this week. NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs, of course. And Craig, as usual, teaching me more and more each and every week as we go along. LoveTheNorth.ca. Don't forget to subscribe, like, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and more importantly, tell your mother. It's going to be a busy week starting Saturday night with the NHL playoffs, and we certainly hope you enjoy them, Craig. I know you will. We'll be keeping a close eye on that. And best wishes to Joe Bowen. I don't know what he's going to do now. I keep on telling his son David that he should be starting a book because I'm sure he's got some interesting tales, not only from his days in Sudbury, starting off as a broadcaster of the Sudbury Wolves, but also on the road with Ralphie and a few of the inside stories with the Leafs as he went along for 44 years. But we certainly wish him well. Craig, have a good week. We're back with more Love the North in 7 days.